Hey there. So I wanted to do a video which I'm going to call Binson Buyer Beware. Seen a lot of adverts lately for Binsons, and I have probably had in excess of 40 of them through this shop to be repaired, gone over, restored, various stages of repair and disrepair as they've showed up. So there's a couple of things and a couple of events that have happened recently that have really pushed me over the edge in terms of being upset with sellers and what they're representing, and then having to deal with buyers of this equipment who are very unhappy with regard to what has to be done to their Binsons to make them useful again. So I wanted to put together a little public service announcement, if you will, but some things that I would be very leery of if I see them in an ad anywhere. Now, there's places where you can buy Binsons that are established sellers, and those Binsons generally are as advertised and they're perfectly fine. But there are independent sellers or private sellers, whatever you want to call them, that advertise on various internet auction sites or buy at a given price site that are representing units that are not necessarily as advertised. And in some cases, it's not at their fault because they don't know what they have. Okay, so that's phrase number one that I'd be very afraid of. I have no way of testing this. I don't know how it works, but it lights up. Okay, that means nothing. Along with, it worked the last time I put it away, 10, 15, 20 years ago, whenever it was. Or was my dad's, I don't know how to use this. Lights up, doesn't mean anything. And these kinds of promises are very empty. And they don't necessarily mean you're going to get yourself a Binson that works when it shows up on your door after you've paid a lot of money for it. So I've got some advice for you. You can take it or leave it. If you disagree with me, that's fine. You can put it in the columns below. I welcome all opinions, okay? But the Binsons have a lot of issues with them, especially if they've been sitting around. The most famous is wiring. You can look that up on the internet just about anywhere, and you can see what happens to Binsons after they've been sitting for a while. But not all of them, only certain ones with certain wiring on them, and I'll help you with that in a couple of minutes. A Binson that's been sitting for a long time, as a minimum, the idler wheel is going to be hard or have a divot in it, which is going to cause problems, and so on and so on. So let's start from the very beginning here, or the way I have my thoughts organized anyhow. Number one, if the Binson says Guild on it, nothing against Guild, it's just the era that it was made, or is a 603 series Binson, you need to be very concerned about the wiring, especially the Guilds that are made with printed circuit boards. They generally are of the era of the wiring that corrodes terribly, all right? I've seen a lot of adverts where they show the outside of the Binson and say, look what great condition it's in. I don't care. The paint has nothing to do with how the unit is going to work. I don't care how pretty it looks. Doesn't mean anything. I've seen some Binsons that look like they've been dragged behind a truck that sound unbelievably great. And I've seen other ones that are pristine, beautiful, what I call aerosol restorations that don't work. So that means nothing, okay? You want at least the pictures, you want the metal cover off, you want the plexiglass lid off, and you want to be able to see the wiring that's on the record playback deck. If it is colored, okay, that could be a problem, and you have to look, and the reason I say could be because when I restore these things, I tend to put colored coaxial cables on there. I'm not talking about the twisted wire that comes off the heads. I'm talking about that's soldered onto the circuit boards. If that wire is colored, you need to look at the center conductor. So there'll be a shield wire that goes off to one terminal, and then another wire, the center conductor and insulation, that'll go to that other terminal. If the wire is colored and that center conductor insulation is brown, you got problems 100% of the time. That's the old wiring that corrodes. That's the first idea, the first reason why, or the first indication, I should say anyway, of you got wiring problems, and the whole unit probably is going to have to be rewired, or some of it depends on who's been in there before. Okay. If that center conductor insulator is white, it's probably a machine that I did because that's the wire that I use, and so it'll be okay. And by the way, the wire that I use will be a little bit thinner and much more brightly colored than the standard wire. It's just because it's what I use. So if that wire is on there, I've probably been through the machine and at least it's been rewired, okay? That's part one. You want to make sure of that. Part two, I would insist on, even with the wiring looking like it's okay, I would insist on photographs with the back and the bottom removed. And you want to be able to look at the wire, okay? And let's pull this down. Okay. You should have them be able to do this with the wire, and the insulation should hold up. I mean, you may not be able to bend this perfect circle in there, but there's generally filament wires to the vacuum tubes that look like this. You should be able to do this with it, and the wire should not turn to powder, okay? I would insist on that if you can, all right? I would also insist on a video of the machine actually working, okay? If they don't know how to test it, at least get yourself a video that shows that the motor turns on and the drum spins, and it looks, at least to you, like the drum is spinning at a constant speed. I don't know if you can see, I've got a unit here that I've been working on. Can't see it in the shot. Okay. At first blush, this is a unit that I wouldn't be too afraid of. The wire is the very old style wire, all right? And it's not a printed circuit board, it's a turret board. So from a wiring standpoint, I would not be afraid of buying this unit. However, there's always a however. What did happen with this unit is you couldn't turn the drum. It was frozen in the bearing. And it took me a lot of work to get it out and get it done, get it squared away so that it spins in the bearing again. So I would like to see a video of it spinning, and you want to see that spinning at a fairly constant speed. The idler wheel should not be, the rubber wheel should not be jumping about as it spins. It should be very steady, very stable. Otherwise, you're going to have to get that redone and so forth, okay? So I've talked about the wiring and getting a video, making sure that the unit works, all right? Don't believe what you read, because 9 times out of 10, you know. So what pushed me over the edge? I mentioned that earlier. Wasn't this year, probably last year, and I've been carrying this around for a long time. I got a phone call from a really nice young man who said, hey, I bought this Binson. Would you look at it? I just want to make sure it's right before before I turn it on. I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. Send it to me. I've got no problem with that. There's a bench charge for doing that, but sure, I'm happy to look at it and give you my opinion. He said, the guy told me that it worked just fine and it would be great, but I'm nervous about putting it on. Smart guy. Okay, so he sends this thing to me. I opened it up and it looked like it came from the bottom of the sea. There was no way that this thing would have ever worked. It probably would have caught fire if he turned it on. So thank God he didn't. Meanwhile, this young man paid pretty close to what I would consider top dollar for a 603. Did everything I could, and I donated some time, which I now said I won't do anymore, but I donated a bunch of time to get it to work and get it to him. He's happy with it now, and that's fine. But it really hacked me off that someone would sell a system like that. Then what pushed me over the edge is a little while back, saw an ad, showed the inside of a 603 with the common rust on the metal parts that comes from the acid that leaches out of the wire. And the seller said, lights up, it'll be great. Don't know what happened on the inside. I think the oil from the bottle spilled out and got on the surfaces and caused it to rust. Okay. Now, I might be an electrical engineer by education and training, but I've never heard of an oil that would cause corrosion, at least not a lubricating oil. There may be some out there. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I took one look at the wiring. I'm going, this is a total rewire on that thing. Top dollar again. Okay. So, to close, be very careful when you buy a Binson. If you want me to review the ad for you, you can get in touch with me either in the comments or find me on Instagram at Hamley Amplification. Send me an email. I'm happy to look. I'll be glad to look at the ad for you and give you my 2 cents. I'm probably going to tick a lot of sellers off, but by the same token, when the thing comes to me because it doesn't work, I at least want you to have talked to me to say, hey, look, I would be afraid of this, okay? Because Binsons tend to show up on my bench. I see them on eBay. I'm thinking, this one's going to show up in a couple of weeks, and it usually does. So anyway, be very careful out there. Buyer beware, by all means, because like I said, I don't think anybody's doing it maliciously. I would never accuse anyone of that. I have no proof. I'm not going to do that, okay? But just be very aware that folks a lot of times don't know what they have, and that's fine. But that means you should, it doesn't mean that you don't know what you buy. You should know what you're buying and so forth. So if I can help you in any way with your Binson, get in touch with me. I don't charge for advice. You can take it or leave it. It might be wrong. I don't know. But, I'll tell you to the best of my knowledge. So, like I said, buyer beware. Be careful. And I'll try and put some other videos up here if I find something interesting about a Binson or whatever that I think I should share. So, enjoy. Thank you for your time. Don't forget, if you're not a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe. You never know what I'll put up here. Thank you.